There's no denying the Philippines has seen the most active November on record for the Pacific typhoon season, having been hit by 6 tropical storms this month alone. And the storms have caused widespread damage. They've killed at least 171 people and have displaced thousands. Local media reports that nearly 4 million people in the Southeast Asian nation have been affected by numerous tropical cyclones so far. That's according to the Philippines National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. The country has been struck by around 16 cyclones this year in total, resulting in floods, landslides, and infrastructure damage, impacting more than 1 million families. And the total damage to infrastructure exceeded $45 million, with around 53,000 houses reported as damaged. Evacuations, school closures, and work stoppages were widespread, and several areas also declared a state of calamity. Geography, seasonal weather patterns, and climate change, they have been blamed for the hyperactive month of storms seen in the nation. Activists from the Philippines attending the United Nations climate talks in Baku, Azerbaijan, highlighted that not enough is being done to address the problem. So let's get more clarity and the very latest from Gustavo Gonzalez, who is the UN resident coordinator in the Philippines. Mr. Gustavo, we understand that you're just back from the disaster-prone areas. So I want to know about the widespread damage across the Philippines. How challenging has it been to disburse the immediate aid to those who've been displaced?
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I think that all of us, we know that the Philippines is ranking, I think, for the last 10 years, #1 in the global risk index. So it's a country with around 20 typhoons per year, 20 active volcanoes, and a country that is surrounded by the ring of fire. So it's quite frequent that we have earthquakes here in the country. But what is happening now is something that we can frame as unprecedented, by the fact that we are talking about 6 typhoons plus 2 super typhoons that they took place in a very short period of time. It's just 6 weeks and in an overlap. So it means that this overlap of typhoons, they have exhausted the resilience of communities and, of course, overwhelmed the capacity of response of the government. So quite an unusual situation. This is a country with a very well-developed early warning system, so all the credits to the government on the capacity to organize preemptive evacuation. If you look at the magnitude of this series of typhoons and the number of casualties, you have just mentioned 171, it's 174, based on the information that I'm just bringing to the capital, 22 missing people. So it's a very low, the numbers of casualties. So this is thanks to this pre-evacuation system, early warning system. But when you have an overlap of this type of shocks, this is even changing our patterns in terms of humanitarian assistance.
So, Mr. Gustavo, it's just been too much, and hence, authorities are just overwhelmed and slammed in many cases. We are waiting on a COP29 communique later today from Azerbaijan, as you may well be aware. What's the best outcome that you're expecting from Baku that would benefit a nation like the Philippines?
Well, first of all, sometimes we have the idea that the climate change is, an intellectual concept and something that is, a big conference that is happening, in a corner in the planet. But when you visit these regions in the Philippines, so I spent 3 days there, you realize that the climate change is not fiction. It's a crude reality. And unfortunately, that is impacting on the most in need, on poor people, those that are, settled in the coastal areas. 60% of the population here is in coastal areas. So this type of shocks immediately affect people. So what we hope from the COP29, of course, is a strong political will and the firm understanding that any investment in handling climate change is a benefit for all of us. What is important is that there is a growing understanding of what we call climate justice. So you know that the Philippines is now the country that will host the Lost and Damaged Fund, the Secretariat. So it means that this is important for this country. This is extremely important for the region, because it's the first time that we will have an institutional instrument that is expected to be gathering the required resources that will look at the impact of a phenomenon that was not created by the Philippines and many other countries, that this is part of a model of development that is impacting those countries, and it's a question of climate justice. So we need to start addressing not just mitigation, but adaptation, and bringing all the resources that the United Nations is requiring, particularly for adaptation, where multilateral development banks, they have an important role. So the Philippines is at the heart of this process. Try to imagine, as soon as we have the Secretariat here, we will continue having these type of events. So a great opportunity to understand, from the field in reality, what is happening with our planet.
All right. I was listening to you praise the Philippine authorities when it came to their disaster management. I must ask you very quickly, how else can authorities brace themselves for uncertain weather events? And I am asking on the lines of an economic rethink, perhaps, because we read your X account where you wrote the estimate that the worsening climate conditions will cost the Philippine government way above what it can afford.
Exactly. Well, let's say this country, certainly you remember the impact of Haiyan, Yolanda, so almost 10 years ago. So the Philippines, the government, academe, research centers, the network of civil society organizations, all of them learn from this big shock. So the Philippines, fortunately, has this, what we call resilience capacity, which mean in some way cutting edge, forecasting systems, early warning system, a numbers of departments, as you mentioned, that are around the National Disaster Risk Reduction Council, that it means a strong institutional capacities, and the recognition that prevention is the best way of addressing this type of phenomenon. No, we always say that $1 in investing in prevention, in disaster risk reduction, you are saving $4 in this recurrent process of early recovery. So this is good. This is excellent for the Philippines, but at the same time, this is a country that is impacted by many other shocks, and particularly the post-COVID phase, and inflation and challenges, geopolitical challenges. And something that is quite difficult to remove is this, threats from typhoons, active volcanoes, and the fact that we have, on a daily basis, around between 20 and 25 earthquakes. So the solution to that is, of course, continue investing in prevention, making sure that the private sector is involved in this process. I'm the humanitarian coordinator, and I think that this is the only country that I have as part of my team. The private sector that is there, I think that they have a major role. When we have these typhoons, the first thing that is affected is the value chain, so they are immediately affected. So we have the elements, and we expect that the Philippines will become a model for the region and for the world. But political will is a fundamental requirement. It's a pity that we are in a context where there is a sort of fragmentation, polarization, introversion. And, it is quite hard to recognize that, let's say, we are in a planet and everything is interrelated. And if we invest in climate change, this is a benefit for all of us.
It's good talking with you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. We've been speaking with Gustavo Gonzalez, who is the UN Resident Coordinator in the Philippines.